And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome to Open Connection, I'm your host, Robert Pictou. Our show today comes to you from the unceded and traditional territory of the Tsimshian people. He was a fisherman, city councillor, and briefly the interim mayor. In 1924, at the age of 3, Foster Hosfoy arrived in Prince Rupert. When he was old enough, he joined his father Bill on the fishing boat. On today's Open Connection, we open our archives to bring you this story from 1991.
Born in Norway. I came here when I was just short of 3. My mother carried me off the train in Rupert here. There's another story. You talk about women having nerve. She brought my older brother and I all across the ocean on a steamer, just by herself, and she came across Canada on the train and couldn't speak a word of English. And 2 little boys, one not quite 3, and the other, I guess, just about 6. And she brought us across the country by herself and got us here. And she carried me off the train, and I guess I was held a little higher than everybody else because I could see my dad, and all I'd ever seen of him was a picture in an oval frame like this. I think I was his farewell present to my mother because I hadn't seen him. And so I said, "Oh, there's Dad, and look, he's got feet too." Kids. That was cute in those days.
And that's how Alderman Foster Hussoy came to live in Prince Rupert over 50 years ago. Hussoy has been a North Coast fisherman nearly all his life and has many fascinating stories to tell. I had the chance to visit with Foster and get an inside look at the Prince Rupert fishing industry of yesteryear. Let's start things out, Foster, by telling me, how did you get attracted to the fishing industry? What made you decide to be a fisherman?
Well, it was the first job I was offered when I was 10 years old. I had a chance to go out on a small salmon trawler here, which gave me an opportunity to earn a little bit of money and get some experience. And my dad was in the fishing industry, and I thought that's where I would be. So I went out on my first salmon trawler when I was 10.
And I understand they didn't have gas motors at that time. What was it like?
I was lucky. The boat I went on did have a gas motor, but my older brother and my dad that year were working out of a rowboat at Langar Island, living on the beach in a tent and getting up in the morning, going out with oars and trolling for spring salmon at Langar Island. And the following year, they got a power boat too, so it made it a little easier for them.
Would you say that the fishing industry is the backbone of Prince Rupert economy then and now?
I would definitely say that the fishing industry is definitely the top industry in Prince Rupert. I can remember several years ago when there was a strike on out at the mill, the car dealers in town said if it hadn't been for the fishing industry, they'd have gone broke. So they notice it in every walk of life in Prince Rupert. If the fishing industry is down, they really know about it. So I would say yes, it definitely is the top industry.
Well, since you've been in the fishing business for over 50 years, you must have a fish story or two for us. What sort of memories, what fond memories do you have about fishing?
I think the real bonanza things are remembering the big days you had in the fishing industry. I can remember one day fishing on the old Ferdelia 3 when we caught and dressed and iced away 25,000 pounds of halibut in one day. That was outstanding. Wow. I can remember the days when Art Staysmith and I, when I had the trawler called the Gulvik, were pulling 500 cohos a day out in Dixon Entrance and getting them dressed and put away properly. And some of the big spring salmon, they've got bigger over the years, of course, but there are so many things in the fishing industry that stand out that it just been a fantastic life for anyone, I would say, that can stand the weather and the hard life.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Thank you for staying with us. More time to fish. That was the answer I received when I asked an avid fisherman why he left early in the morning to fish. Let us return to the archives as Foster tells us about his morning routine.
On a salmon troller, in the peak of the summer, you start by getting up and putting on the coffee pot and some toast at about 2 to 2:30. You would have your coffee and toast and haul the anchor up and get out to the part of the ground that you're fishing on and get your gear in the water and take the coffee pot back in the stern with you, and hopefully you didn't get out of there until you were hungry and if the fish were biting. And you would work then and probably get the anchor down at dark, which would be about 10:30 or 11 at night, and you would get maybe another hour's work if you were lucky, icing fish away, and then get in the bunk and start it all over again at 2:30. Halibut fishing is a little different. There are more men on board the boat, but there again, it's not unusual to start up at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, and get up and have your toast and coffee. And in the old days, we used to set our gear at that time, and then we would stop and have our breakfast, and then start hauling the gear. Mm-hmm. Halibut fishing was the way we did it then was a much more regulated way of working, because once you'd got up and put your gear in the water, your whole day was set for you. You usually set enough gears that you would have to haul it all back that day, so you knew exactly what you were going to be doing for the entire day. But if you were lucky enough to run into the kind of a bonanza that we ran into the day I was telling you about, where we hauled aboard 25,500 pounds, and it was just, well, we couldn't begin to haul all our gear. Mm-hmm. It was impossible. It took us 2 days to haul the gear, and then we were full and had to go to town. So, but those are the big days. I mean, there are a lot of skinny ones where you pull all day long, and all you do is kill dogfish and starfish and see nothing practically in the halibut. But you always remember the big ones.
Well, what about the competition aspect? Is it fierce out there when there's a fishing opening?
Yes, in the halibut, they used to be the odd gear battle over a piece of ground that had good fishing on it. Salmon trolling is a little different. It's a game where you pretty well have to fish in an orderly fashion. You're not trying to move someone off the ground, although there have been cases where people will push you off an edge that you're trolling along or something like that. But ordinarily, it's fairly gentlemanly. But in the halibut, you could get people setting over the top of your gear, and of course that would be a terrible mess. Mm-hmm. And in the herring fishery lately, where you have these shotgun openings where the entire herring fleet would be laying waiting to set, and when the whistle blew, you'd maybe have 10 or 15 minutes to get your fish in. There are people ramming into each other and waving rifles at each other and everything else, and well, I mean, you figured out in one set there that one year we were out. In one set, the crew shared $60,000 a man on one set, but that was the year that the herring prices peaked at $5,000 a ton. It's a lot different now. It's not nearly that lucrative, and the coast has been divided up, and the fleet is much smaller, so it's a lot easier fishing. But in those days, in the first days that we went into the herring fishery, it was just the whole fleet was there, and if you got in someone's way that was bigger and harder than you just had to get out of the way. That's all. It. Yeah.
Every man for himself.
You got it.
Do you have a favorite sort of fishing? Is there a favorite type?
I think of all of the fishing I did, I think the halibut fishing was the one I liked the best. I think it's the one where you work the hardest, but it was a fairly regular thing. You knew, like I say, you knew from the time you got that gear in the water what you'd be doing for the rest of the day, and you could plan around it. And you could, it was quite easy. I think possibly the next one would be the king crab fishery, where we could do the same thing. We were the only boat in Canada, I guess, that ever fished king crab. We had 60 pots, and in a good day we would haul maybe 30 or 40 of them, and then you'd be running from place to place, and you always had time to get a decent meal, and everything was fairly regulated. But in the fisheries where it's just a mad dog existence, like trolling at its peak when you're hauling in 500 or 600 fish a day. It's no fun. It's just hard work, you know. But I don't know. I like it. I like being on the water, and I like the regular life of the halibut fishery. It was quite good.
Was fishing work to you?
Yeah, it was a way of life, I guess. It gave me the ability to earn a fairly good living in a short period of time, and then for the rest of the year I could go around and do whatever I wanted. That was in the days when I only fished halibut or I only trolled salmon. We would troll for maybe 6 months of the year, and the other 6 you could work at other trades if you wanted to, or if you'd made enough money you didn't have to do anything. Halibut fishing, for some years we only fished 42 days. And then the rest of the year you had to find something else to do. I became a qualified electrician, a reasonably good carpenter. I was a foreman in the stevedoring game, and I've done a little bit of everything, and the fishing industry's allowed me to do that.
So the piecemeal type of existence hasn't bothered you?
Oh no, I've enjoyed it. And like my wife and some of her friends used to say, being married to a fisherman is excellent, because if you don't like him, you're happy to see him go, and if you like him, you're happy to see him come back.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome back to Open Connection. Earlier this week, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration did not approve Tesla's full self-driving feature, a $15,000 software add-on. Let us return to the archives as Foster tells us about some boats that are self-driving.
These boats that leave Seattle now, they'll run offshore and they'll program in where they want to go to. Say they're going to Sandpoint or up along the Aleutian chain somewhere, and they'll program in all the places that they want to go. And someone has to stand there and watch to make sure they don't run into somebody. But no one touches the steering wheel. It's all done. It's all pre-programmed, and it all comes up on a sat-nav chart where so you know exactly where you are in relationship to where you want to be all the time. And on these new Loran sets, when you're running from one position to another, it tells you the course that you should change to. It tells you what the tidal drift is doing to you. It tells you how far you've come and how far you've got to go, and it tells you when you're there. I mean, we used to have to do that by dead reckoning. We used to leave the top end of the Queen Charlotte Islands and head up into the Gulf of Alaska, and by dead reckoning we used to be able to pick up a little piece of ground in the ocean there that we wanted to fish on. But you don't have to do that anymore.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like the Foster Husoi I know would not want to be fishing today.
Oh, I would do it if I was young enough, I guess, because that's what I know best. But it's not the fun it was. The joy has gone out of it. Now it's technical.
Well, before you had all the equipment, was it more or less a gentleman's agreement, and a lot of trust between the fishermen?
Yeah, you would. A lot of guys would know that you fished a certain area, and they would leave you alone. You know, but now nothing's sacred anymore. If someone runs by you and they see you fishing there, they'll just take down the Loran bearing of where you're fishing and size up where your gear is and mark it down. And then if you happen to come in with a good trip, the next time you come back, that guy will be there. You know, there's no secrets anymore. It's all electronic. Everybody knows everything. And like I say, salmon runs now are programmed into computers, and some of these big seine fleets have a master computer aboard one of their biggest seiners, and this guy, they have a meeting before they leave, and he tells every one of them where they should go. And they all go to a certain place, so they capitalize on every run, and it's all in the computer. Guys like Joe Hogan locally here, he's got all that knowledge in his head, and that's made him a top fisherman for years. But these guys with the computers are gradually catching up to him. So it's too bad. The old days are going.
What's your opinion of the department? Despite heavy criticism over the years, Foster has firm faith in the resource management department of the DFO.
I think they're working as well as they can with the limited resources that they have. There's a lot of really good, dedicated men in there. There's some fellows that are new at the game and are all gung-ho to enforce the laws as they know them, that make mistakes and just get a little bit too pushy. But in the majority of cases, they're dedicated people doing a really good job. And right now, I was just the other day in Vancouver, we're reviewing a new scheme that's coming up, proposed by a fellow called Carl Walters, that is a marine biologist, I think, from UBC, and he's also a computer nut. He's got a program put together where they're talking about getting deep-sea trawlers. That's the ones that tow the lures behind, not the ones that tow it on them. And they're going to get these people to go out equipped with satellite navigation systems and computers, and they're going to go out and they'll take samples. They'll even have microscopes, radio microscopes on board, and what they'll do is they'll even take scale samples off the fish that they catch. And they'll be up to 60 or 70 kilometers off the beach. And they'll take scale samples of these fish and they'll put them in the microscope, and the microscope will feed the configuration of the scale into the computer, which will broadcast it through the satellite and put it into the computer at UBC, and like that they know where that fish, what river it's going to, so that they can immediately identify the size of the runs that are coming in and when they're going to arrive. He calculates that with the present management tools, 25 to 30% of every run is being wasted. And he said that if they can put this in place, they can take it down to 10% and still have a safe cushion to guard the stocks. The way it is now, they're rather than jeopardize the stocks of fish, they're erring on the side of safety. So they're wasting all this fish. Like we have an instance where we had 2 million excess sockeye show up in the Skeena system one year, and it could have quite easily been taken by the the commercial fleet down here. And the same thing's going on down the Fraser River. Quite often they're allowing more fish up the river than what is needed to perpetuate the stocks. But the thing is that they have to do that. They have to err on the side of caution.
Caution, yeah, that's right.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Canada has an abundance of freshwater and marine and coastal areas that are ecologically diverse and economically significant. Fisheries and Oceans Canada mandate includes the responsibility for the conservation and sustainable use of Canada's fisheries resources. In this final segment of Open Connection, Foster shares what happens when a section is closed to fishing.
How do you feel as a fisherman about the groundfish closure north of 54? I understand that a lot of Prince Rupert fishermen are upset, saying that that would take away the mainstay of their fishing season.
Well, what it can do, if it goes through, it's going to hurt the shore workers more than it is going to hurt the fishermen, because the fact that they've been able to get those extra trips in that quadrant out there has made it so that they are pretty well forced to bring their fish in here. If they're down to 2 trips a month, they have time to run south to Bellingham, and they get a better price for the fish because the shore workers down there are paid less. On a big trawler, they'll save something like maybe $10,000 a trip on fuel. And I don't know, groceries I think are about on par, but the thing is that it's going to hurt Prince Rupert more than it's going to hurt the average fisherman. They'll still make a good living. But what bothers me about it all is that I still don't know if the research they've done is conclusive enough to make that kind of a closure. I haven't seen any documentation on it. I've asked about it, and all I've been told is that they're doing it to protect perch stocks. And I'm not sure that they know that much about what stocks are out there. I really don't know if they know. And this is what bothers me. I don't know how much research they've done. I've seen no papers, no studies or anything on it. I'm just having to take their word. And I'm on the advisory council to the Minister of Fisheries. So, I asked twice now to get the data on it, and all I've been told is that I can be assured that it was done to protect the stocks. And I'm not very happy about it.
Well, how would you say the fishing industry today compares with the fishing industry of yesterday? Would you think that it's more of a cutthroat industry today as opposed to people getting along and making a living off the sea in the old days?
the way I can put it, when I really liked it, it was fun. In the herring fishery, we would go out and find our own fish. We would scout around until we found a nice body of fish, and we would set on it and take samples. And this is after the roe fishery came in. We would take our own samples and analyze whether we felt the herring had enough spawn in it to be able to sell it for Kazanoko. If it did, we would take the fish and deliver it to town. If it didn't, we'd open the seine up and let them go. But we found our own fish. We were hunters then. And it's the same with salmon and all of these things. We had a much longer season. I can remember going out on the west coast of the Charlottes in March and April, fishing for spring salmon. And I'd go out there and stay there. And you know, a lot of times you had to ride out some pretty bad storms, but at least you were going on your own judgment. Now you're pretty well told when you can go, and somebody has to almost tell you where to go because they're not sure that it's safe for you to be there for the stock. So I mean, in those days it was a hunter existence as well as fishing. Now they take you into an area. There's scout boats watch what's happening to the stocks, and they say, okay, now you can get ready. We think we're going to have an opening in an hour or two. And then they get everybody lined up, and this is in the herring, and somebody says it's open now, and everybody runs in there and makes a set, and 10 minutes or 15 minutes later they say it's closed now, and that's it. There's no fun anymore.
That's what I was trying to find out. Is it more clinical as opposed to...
It's no fun at all. It's just another way to mine now. It's a mining experience, not a fishing experience anymore.
Tapping on his wealth of fishing experience, I wondered what direction Foster would like to see the industry take in the future.
Well, I would like to see, in particular, I would like to see the Canadian government enact something like is in the Magnuson Act, which gives them the power, if they want to direct where the fish has to be landed. I mean, if the fish is caught in the north here, it should be landed in the north. And I would like to see that. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the people on shore in an area are just as entitled to a living out of that resource as the people that go to sea to fish it. And I would definitely like to see some protection for the people that work on shore so that they get their share of the fishing resources as well. And I think, you know, the artificial propagation of fish and that could be stepped up. I know there's a review going on right now of building up the sockeye runs in the Fraser. I think the same thing should be being done in the Skeena and in the Nass. All of those rivers have a potential for possibly putting out twice as much fish as is coming out of them now. And why go to the expense of having these floating fish farms when you can do it in nature? And I believe that the catching of the fish at sea and bringing them in and shore workers working on them is the right way to go. I think it employs more people than they are, you know, growing them in pens does. And mind you, the fish farmers won't like that, but that's just the way I see it.
So you would say that the fishing industry is solid enough to support the economy of Prince Rupert, or a major piece of the economy for years to come?
If it was protected properly by legislations, that the fish isn't all hauled away.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Open Connection. The greatest distance in the existence of man is not from here to there, but the connection from his mind and heart. If we can conquer that distance, we can soar like an eagle and realize our immensity within. I'm Robert Pictou.